Welcome to Health, Housing, Energy Equity, exploring clean energy access for low and moderate income residents. I'm your host, Brooks Winner, and I'm a clean energy specialist at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. MAPC is the regional planning agency serving the 101 cities and towns of Greater Boston. I'm joined by my colleague, Sasha Perotti from MAPC's Community Engagement Team, who will be our Zoom moderator for today. Hi, Sasha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Brooks. Thank you, everybody.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
So this training is being recorded. Sasha, you can see the slides okay? And so the presentations and the recording will be posted on the MAPC website. If you do not want to be recorded, you can turn off your camera and microphone. I want to begin today, as we did last week, by acknowledging that we are gathering in the middle of converging and connected crises: the public health crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, and the housing crisis. Over the past 18 months, we have seen just how closely linked health, housing, and climate are through the lenses of these intersecting, interconnected crises. I invite us all to take a moment to breathe together and to honor those who have been impacted by any and all of these issues. Thank you for being here. I also want to acknowledge that we have a wonderful diversity of perspectives with us here today. People from different places, different fields, and different backgrounds. Welcome to all of you, and especially to those of you who wouldn't normally attend a clean energy training. We're so glad that you're here. Over the course of this training series, we are learning about how health, housing, and energy are connected and what we can do to help our neighbors lower their energy costs and make their homes healthier and safer with clean energy. We will explore some of the underlying issues that make it difficult for low and moderate income folks to access clean energy and share resources to overcome these barriers. In the first session last week, we learned about how our history of racist and discriminatory policy impacts who has access to affordable housing and affordable energy today. And then we looked at clean energy programs that can help lower the energy cost burden for low and moderate income people in Greater Boston and across Massachusetts. If you missed it, the materials from the first session are available on MAPC's website at the link on the slide. And you can visit mapc.org/resource-library/arc-training to find those. The recording from last week is up and we'll be posting the slides shortly. Today, we will dive in to learn about energy efficiency solutions and the ways in which communities are working to expand access to weatherization, clean heating and cooling systems, and other solutions for lowering energy bills and reducing energy use. Next week, in our final session of the series, we'll learn about solar energy programs and other opportunities to help reduce energy burdens. This training series is made possible by a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources through its Affordable Access Regional Coordination Grant Program. Throughout this series, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas, your solutions, the barriers that you're facing in your communities, and we want to acknowledge and appreciate the knowledge and the wisdom that you all bring to this space today. With that, I'll turn it over to Sasha to lead us through a quick icebreaker activity.
Thank you very much, Brooks, and good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you all. I'm going to share my screen briefly to show you what we will be doing. But before I do that, I also invite you to join me on this Jamboard. I just shared the link in the chat. And the question we will be responding to today is, what are you hoping to learn from today? And you can Google an image and copy and paste it right here into the board. And we will be able to see your wonderful photos and images of the learnings that you would like to take away from today. So I copied and pasted, I don't know if it'll work. It did not work. I had one image that I was going to put in here. Let me see if I can do it. But I welcome you all to get started in adding your own images if you would like.
The other thing folks can do, Sasha, is go over to the left-hand side to that mountain like image button under the sticky note button, and that allows you to either upload something from your computer or do a Google image search, which is the sort of middle option there. So feel free to either put a sticky note that says in text what you're thinking, or if you're really excited to learn about heat pumps today, for example, you could type in heat pumps and find a nice image of an air source heat pump, or maybe a ground source heat pump, something like that. So take some time and let us know what you're looking forward to learning today.
Thank you, Brooks. And folks, if you're having trouble joining this Jamboard or adding to it, you can also put your answer to the question in the chat and I can add it to the Jamboard for you. Great. So we're seeing folks are interested in how communities are making resources affordable to low-income residents, ways to incorporate these resources into planning efforts. I'm seeing an image of somebody jumping to the finish line. Collaboration, understanding how climate justice fits into this, learning how to help neighbors who are mostly renters find resources, understanding the Massachusetts energy burden, developing informational programs to get people interested. Wonderful. I'll just wait for a few more. Please feel free to add. I'm just going to check the chat. Understanding the visibility of district heating and cooling systems for various community sizes. Understanding how equity plays into all of this. Great. Perfect. Healthy food resources in communities that experience the disparities from grocery redlining. And the last one I'll read is understanding how people in private market rental housing can benefit from mass save programs and how we can incentivize private market landlords whose tenants pay their utilities to participate in energy efficiency programs. Wonderful. Thank you so much for adding to the board. If you haven't had a chance to add to it, you're welcome to do so after, but I am going to move us along to the next phase of our discussion today. So I just briefly want to go over our group agreements. Group agreements is a process that we use here at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council to, when we are coming into community with one another, into space with one another, ensure that we have a ground level of understanding that we are all sharing about how we are participating in the space and how we are engaging with one another. These are not the only group agreements that are possible. And if you do have any edits or suggestions, we welcome you to put those in the chat as I walk through them. And I do want to acknowledge that this is something that people spend a lot of time working on. Groups can spend an entire hour, hour and a half, sometimes day coming together on group agreements on how they operate. So this is a very brief overview, but it is something that we wanted to bring into today's session just to kind of lay the groundwork of how we'll all be connecting with one another today. So some agreements that we look towards here at MAPC are using I statements when speaking about especially lived experience and or responding to information, taking space and making space. So if you are somebody who speaks up a lot, that's wonderful. Maybe consider taking a step back for folks who have not spoken as much yet. And if you're someone who tends to mostly absorb and listen, we do want to hear from all of you today. So please engage with us if you would like to. Using accessible language, so trying to de-jargon and de-technicalize language, just recognizing that we may be coming from very different fields and technical backgrounds, making sure that folks understand what we're referencing when we're speaking to it. Leaning into edges, which we also know is going beyond our comfort zone and being curious about things that we may not be familiar with. Accepting and expecting lack of closure in this session. We will not be able to cover everything that there is to know on this topic today, but we're hoping that this can be an important stepping stone in that conversation. Listening for understanding rather than listening explicitly to respond or for any other purpose, really listening to understand and being fully present in that, and actively participating. I know in the Zoom world, it's hard to minimize distractions, but setting aside our email or other messages and really trying to be as present here in this space as possible. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Brooks.
Thanks, Sasha. And could you make me a host again? I think when I made you host, I no longer had hosting privileges. So
yes.
And great. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So to kick us off this morning, we have a presentation from my colleague in MAPC's Public Health Department, Jeanette Pantoja. Jeanette's going to walk us through some research that she has done into the health benefits of clean energy and specifically energy efficiency to go with our theme today. Jeanette would have loved to be here with us, but she's on maternity leave, so she pre-recorded her presentation. So I'm going to play it. And Sasha, can you just let me know if you can hear the audio when the video starts?
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, quickly, before I start the video, just some background about Jeanette. She's a senior public health and climate planner at MAPC. In this role, she supports collaborative approaches to address the social and physical conditions that impact health outcomes and disparities in the Boston region. Her work focuses on the health sector's engagement in efforts to promote housing stability and economic mobility, and on the integration of public health into local climate change planning processes.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Pantoja, and I am a public health and climate change planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'll be sharing some highlights from a literature review our team conducted on the connections between health and clean energy, specifically on home energy efficiency. To understand how energy efficiency influences health, it's important to recognize that healthy, affordable housing is a strong foundation for good health. Housing primarily influences health through 4 pathways: housing stability, or our ability to keep our home even through periods of economic hardship; quality, affordability, and the conditions in the neighborhoods where our homes are located. Energy efficiency affects each of these pathways, but I'm going to focus on 3 ways in which it specifically affects housing quality and affordability. Our home environment is the place where we spend most of our time. Poor housing conditions can harm our health by increasing our exposure to pests, pollution, risk of injury, and extreme temperatures. Some of the more common energy efficiency interventions, such as increased insulation, air sealing, and heating system upgrades, produce more consistent and comfortable temperatures throughout people's homes. Rather than having to crowd in a single room for warmth and AC, people may be able to use more of their home, which promotes privacy, productivity, and improved mental health. The research focuses most often on energy efficiency's influence on people's experiences of winter temperatures, but we often hear from families and individuals about the challenge of having to compromise between cooling a bedroom for sleeping or cooling their kitchen and living areas to allow for cooking or studying. More consistent, moderate temperatures can also help control humidity and mold, which can benefit people with respiratory and allergy symptoms. Many different factors influence indoor air quality. These can include, our home's proximity to sources of air pollution, building design and materials, home appliances, and residents' behaviors like cooking, smoking, and opening windows. The two energy efficiency interventions that can most significantly influence indoor air quality are upgrades to home heating and cooking systems and improved ventilation and filtration. Because of the pandemic, more people now understand that good ventilation can reduce our exposure to infectious disease. A well-ventilated home can also reduce our exposure to harmful chemicals that could be circulating in the air. Older fossil fuel burning heating and cooking systems like gas stoves are also significant sources of indoor air pollution. Gas stoves release a lot of the same pollutants that come from our car tailpipes, which can contribute to indoor air pollution levels that would be considered illegal outdoors. Poor indoor air can trigger headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and even contribute to people's risks of experiencing certain cancers and maternal health complications. Improving the air quality in people's homes can be especially beneficial to people with cardiovascular and respiratory conditions like asthma. At minimum, we should always use a hood fan when cooking on a gas stove. However, we know that not all homes are equipped with range hoods. We're excited to see more recent mobilizing among health and environmental justice advocates around the idea that getting rid of gas infrastructure is not only good for the planet, but also our health. Lastly, more energy efficient homes can save people money on their energy bills. Energy costs affect the affordability of our home. The most common used definitions of housing affordability say that housing costs, inclusive of our utility expenses, should make up no more than 30% of a household's income. Even before the pandemic, nearly a third of US households struggled to pay their energy bills, leading 1 in 5 households to reduce spending on food, medicine, and other necessities. Better insulated homes and more efficient heating and cooling systems can also make it less costly to maintain a home at a safer temperature in the winter and summer. The MAPC Public Health and Clean Energy teams have been working closely with several communities this summer and last summer to prepare for and respond to climate change-driven extreme heat. Energy bill costs are the most frequently mentioned reason that people can't afford to cool their home. Since the start of the pandemic, the number of families falling behind on utility bills has gotten much worse. And connecting people to these energy saving programs is one of the ways that we're hoping to tackle these challenges. Extreme temperatures, poor indoor air quality, and energy cost burdens disproportionately impact low-income communities of color because they're more likely to live in older, inefficient housing, and if they rent, have less control over their living environment. Pretty consistently, the research we reviewed showed that low-income households and people with pre-existing health conditions, especially children with asthma, experience the greatest health burdens associated with energy efficiency. And programs that specifically target improvements to the homes of people with health conditions are among the most impactful. This last point is especially exciting for me as a public health planner. Like other home interventions that we typically associate with health, mold and lead abatement, pest removal, accessibility improvements for people with mobility impairments, home energy efficiency can enhance a home's ability to promote health and well-being among residents. Through this research, we learned about examples across the country, like the Washington State Weatherization Plus Health Program, that have seen significant improvements in energy bill savings and health outcomes by integrating health and clean energy. It's examples like this that motivate our team to work across our respective disciplines to advance energy efficiency as a healthy housing strategy. Thank you.
Great. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, Jeanette is not here to answer questions today, but if you have any questions about what you heard in the presentation, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we can try to answer them the best we can when we get to the discussion and Q&A portion of the training later this morning. So with that, I think that's a good setup for our next presentation from Meg Howard from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. Meg is going to take us through a presentation about heat pumps. They are a useful clean heating and cooling technology that I think will help with a lot of the sort of health benefits that Jeanette covered in her presentation. And Meg's going to talk about what heat pumps are and when they make sense, when they work, and when they don't work for low and moderate income residents in Massachusetts. Meg is a program director at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, where she focuses on residential building decarbonization. Prior to joining MassCEC, she worked in green building consulting and in energy facility siting for the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. Meg is also an aspiring HERS rater, having completed the training, but still working on her field ratings. Although her middle name is Singer, she's pretty tone deaf, but has been learning to enjoy singing more since the start of the pandemic. So Meg, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brooks. And I won't sing today. It's more of a personal activity. Should I share my screen here?
Yes, if you want to. I have your slides up. If you'd rather me drive, I'm happy to, but you should be able to share.
No, I'm happy to share my screen.
Great.
All right, so like Brooks said, today I'm going to talk about heat pumps, and especially implications and questions as they're applied in low and moderate income households. I'll start some with the why heat pumps, why electrifying buildings, and then a little bit of basics about what the heat pump technology is. MassCEC has done several different programs and pilots in this area, and I'll talk about some of the lessons we've learned. And then finally, just a few of my concluding thoughts about how and when they might apply or be good solutions for low and moderate income households. So first, why are we talking about heat pumps in the context of clean energy? And just stepping back, Massachusetts, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is legally required to get to net zero emissions by 2050. Also argue morally required as a role as a developed and heavily emitting economy. Buildings are a big part of that. They're 27% of our state's emissions are just from on-site fuels. So not even the electricity our buildings use, but just the fossil fuels that we burn in our buildings emit 27% of the greenhouse gases in our state. So obviously if we're getting to net zero, we've got to do something about buildings. At the same time, they're a huge cost. Average households spend $2,500 per year on energy spending. As we heard in the presentation last week, that burden isn't equitably distributed among, the low-income households bear sort of a disproportionate energy burden. And just the last fact and figure I have on the bottom is just to emphasize that will be a tricky challenge that we're trying to reach over 2.5 million buildings, residential, commercial, lab, all kinds of buildings. So it's a lot of decision makers that need to act differently between now and 2050. But there is sort of an emerging strategy of how we're going to get there from the state, and sort of a 4-pronged strategy. One is electrifying end uses such as buildings, and you can see the quote here from our state's most recent clean energy and climate plan. That's the quote at the bottom, saying that we really are going to have to start both deploying a lot more building envelope retrofits and also heat pumps. And then we need to, the second prong is sort of that energy efficiency, and also make sure the loads can be a little bit more flexible. Like when you need electricity in your home, if it's possible to shift that and make it more flexible, then it will better integrate with renewable electric supply. And the fourth prong is probably figuring out some kind of carbon sequestration, even as we drastically cut emissions. So what are heat pumps? Sort of at the highest level explanation I would give, these are some pictures of different kinds of heat pumps, which I'll talk more about in a minute, but they use a refrigerant loop to move heat between spaces. They're systems that can heat and cool. I think probably the easiest way to think about it is like it's an air conditioner that can work in reverse. And there are different kinds of heat pumps. The one that's probably most like an air conditioner or a central air conditioner is a centrally ducted heat pump, where you have an outdoor unit that can look almost exactly like an air conditioner outdoor unit, or might be a little bit taller and narrower, but sort of same idea, connected to a central air handler that then distributes heated or cooled air through ductwork throughout the home. There's also ductless heat pumps, which instead of running ducts through the home, just run the refrigerant lines through the home, and then they connect to different units that have little kind of fans right there in a space that's being conditioned. So the most common one, I'll show pictures later, is the wall-mounted unit that are shown in these icons up here. There's also floor-mounted units, and these ductless can have just one indoor unit to one outdoor unit, or they can have multiple indoor units connected to one outdoor unit. You can sort of mix and match between ducted and ductless. This diagram shows a ductless on the first floor and a ducted serving the rooms upstairs. And then there are other kinds of heat pumps, the kind I was talking about, mostly drew and dumped heat from outdoors in the air. There's something called the ground source heat pump that draws heat and dumps heat into the ground. And more expensive to do up front, but long-term more efficient, because it's, the ground is a more consistent temperature than the air. And there are some other, not so common in this country and region yet, but there are air to water heat pumps too, where you have an outdoor unit that then connects to some kind of hot water heating system. And why are heat pumps sort of the answer to this challenge of decarbonizing buildings, getting fossil fuels out of buildings? If you look even today, they have significantly less greenhouse gas emissions per unit of heat. But then as we kind of pursue that third prong of cleaning up our electricity supply with more solar, more wind, then, as we eventually reach 100% renewable grid, heat pumps will also have zero emissions. So now I want to talk a little bit about some lessons we've learned from our different efforts on this space. I think sort of the first big one is that they can be standalone solutions for homes in Massachusetts. You can heat throughout the winter and serve as a sole source of heat for a well-insulated home. I guess I'm mentioning this, there was older models I think were less well designed for this climate, and there was the perception, they don't work great below freezing, but there have been some design and engineering changes that mean that these units can serve as the sole source of heat. They are sort of deployed most effectively if the home has some efficiency and weatherization, like insulation and air sealing. you want an installer that's taking a thoughtful approach to system sizing. If you really are switching your whole home over, it's almost like a new heating system, and so you want someone who's being thoughtful about that. And then the last thing is, just a sort of almost seems like a silly little thing, but making sure that if you're really going to use this for your source of heat, that it's above the snow line. So this unit at the top here is right on the ground, covered in snow, and it kind of maybe had some water dripping onto it too, and got frosted up. So you want to mount it up, either attach it to a building and mount it up, or put it on a stand, mount it up to the snow. So we've had a number of programs that have, had heat pumps successfully doing this in Massachusetts. We had a whole home pilot that just finished. We had a sort of similar effort specifically focused on low-income households. That is probably started a little earlier and is still ongoing, but has successfully shown that can work through the low-income programs in our state. We also had a VRF incentive program. VRF is just sort of industry name for a more commercial form of this technology. So through that program, we saw heat pumps being deployed in multifamily, including affordable housing multifamily development. So there are solutions for larger scale buildings as well. And we are specifically doing a pilot in public housing that is sort of ongoing. So they can work. Customers are happy with them. We've done some follow-up surveys for our whole home pilot and found that basically everyone is at least somewhat satisfied with the level of comfort for heating, and everyone was fully satisfied, or somewhat or fully satisfied with the level of comfort for cooling. I mentioned this already, but just to emphasize again that if there are opportunities to weatherize, insulate, air seal your home, that's going to mean that you can put in a smaller heat pump system, save money on the heat pump system up front, and then also it will cost you less to run because your home will need less heating and cooling as it's better weatherized. The picture on the top is just someone doing a test of like how leaky is a home, which is a good way to start to know how much of an issue you have. And then the picture on the bottom shows the indoor air handling unit for a heat pump in an attic that's had spray foam in it. And this customer participated in our whole home pilot, and they actually did the spray foaming after they put in the heat pump. So some of the like silver bunchy stuff is their ducts, and those are insulated ducts. So the ductwork was already somewhat insulated, but they found once they insulated the whole attic, they just noticed the whole house could like cool down a lot more quickly, and it was just more comfortable to live in. And this is just a note that I think we probably need better solutions to get customers to do weatherization first, or to do both weatherization and heat pumps at the same time. And I know that's something we're thinking about at the Clean Energy Center. Some of my peers who are going to speak later from our Mass Save utility efficiency programs are definitely thinking about this question too. So definitely something we're all focused on. I do want to acknowledge that upfront and operating costs are currently a barrier to heat pump adoption. In our whole home pilot, we had median installed costs of $20,000 for retrofit homes and $14,000 for new construction. New construction can be designed sort of with heat pumps in mind, and also tend to be tighter buildings. We found lower costs there, but especially on the retrofit side, pretty high cost if you're thinking like your gas heater just failed. Maybe it costs $6,000 to $9,000 to get a new sort of drop-in boiler or furnace. If you're adding cooling to a home that never had cooling, this may be the cheapest way, but it's a huge upfront cost, and not something that every household can take on. There are financing mechanisms available through Mass Save. Our state offers a 0% interest loan for 7 years. But again, financing is not necessarily accessible to everyone, and there are still then the monthly payments. I mentioned that we had run this program specifically with ABCD through the Mass Save, that is also the provider for the Mass Save low income program, and they had sort of similar average costs, although recently some of the more recent projects, they've been figuring out ways to get those costs more like $15,000 to $18,000 for ductless and $12,000 to $15,000 for ducted. So I think, with some comfort with technology, the right equipment, the right installers, there are ways to drive it down some. But they are still like, it's a barrier, and probably something that we will, as a society, need to subsidize if we're really going to make this transition quickly. An alternate approach to fully covering your whole home with heat pumps, we ran another pilot, or we supported another pilot where homes put in maybe 1 or 2 compressors to try and heat the bulk of their heat, but still keep a backup system for when it got too cold for the heat pumps. And so those costs were only $7,700, still not cheap, but a more manageable upfront cost. So that was upfront cost side, and then there's the operating cost side. This is our recent estimate showing that heat pumps are basically on par with oil. Sometimes, recent years they've been a little bit more expensive. Oil has been a little bit more expensive than heat pumps to operate, but more expensive than natural gas. Certainly if you have electric resistance or propane heat pumps will be cheaper to operate. I have this caveat here that your mileage may vary. This is based on a lot of assumptions we made for sort of a typical 2,000 square foot home. But there are a lot of assumptions that went into that about how efficient your fossil fuel systems were, your heat pumps were. And this number, how well insulated the home was. So I'm not saying these are like the costs you're going to see. And for different homes, this breakdown may shift one direction or the other. But right now, this is a big barrier, and something I think about a lot in terms of heat pump adoption for low and moderate income households. And then I think, the real kicker or challenge that we're in is that these prices may flip in 5 to 10 years, or even this winter. I think, there started to be thoughts that gas prices may really go up this winter. And I think to a certain extent, residential customers will be shielded from the full impact of that. But, we could really start to see this flip sooner from some price shocks like that, or, in 5 to 10 years, just as people start to leave the gas system, it will get more expensive for those that remain. If there's more carbon pricing, these are all things that could drive the cost of gas up. So we can't just say, oh, well, well-to-do people can get heat pumps and be early adopters and drive the technology, and everyone else will just wait, because it may be that then, we're in a situation 10 years from now where low-income households are all still using fossil fuels, and that's becoming more and more expensive. So it's definitely a key question, not just on my mind, but a lot of policymakers. Our Attorney General has really been pushing this issue at the Department of Public Utilities. And, it is on people's minds of sort of what, how to balance this short-term reality of lower gas prices with sort of what we're expecting in the mid to long term. And then the last thing I want to highlight is just some workforce challenges and opportunities that have come up from working in this space. We've definitely found some companies that are on board with full electrification of homes, but a lot aren't quite comfortable with the best practices to fully electrify homes. So that's sort of like a education barrier for the existing workforce. At the same time, this is a HVAC workforce in general is aging. A lot of the workforce is reaching retirement age, and it's typically been a pretty white male-dominated field. So there is an opportunity to bring new, more diverse workers into the profession that is, a well-paying career track and also a possible pathway to owning your own business. So this is definitely an area that Mass CEC hopes to expand our efforts in, recruiting new and more diverse workforce in this area. So my last slide here, just some final thoughts about, at this point, what I'd say for heat pumps in low and moderate households. And, this will depend on exactly, what kind of community or portfolio you're working with. But in general, I would say definitely think of installing this technology for new construction, where you have upfront costs comparable or less than other options. You can save the cost of running gas to your home. There may still be cost disparities between gas and heat pumps, but they are mitigated by more efficient buildings. So overall, lower utility bills should mean lower cost differences. I think they're a strong contender for oil and propane retrofits. after the end of as our pilot has kind of been wrapping up in this space, Mass State has taken over and begun offering no cost heat pump conversions for households in Massachusetts that are on oil and propane and below 60% of state median income. So this is a pretty new offering in the last year or so, and a great opportunity for people to go to heat pumps where it does make sense on an operating cost basis. And then I think in the upcoming year, you can expect to see, I'm not with Mass State, so I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think they've sent some signals that there's going to be some more significant incentives in the 60 to 80% of state median income range. So should be great to see that. And then for households that have natural gas, you have talked about this price split. So I would say proceed with caution for now. If there's an opportunity to weatherize, reduce utility costs, pairing with solar PV may be a way to bring down a household's electricity costs and therefore sort of flip the point at which, just make it so that heat pumps may be a more cost-effective solution than natural gas to operate. You can consider partial or supplemental systems. Like I mentioned in our one pilot, I would say, if possible, to think about, if you're going that route, to think about what's the pathway to full electrification in the home, just so that the investment now can build towards a later investment instead of having to sort of redo it all in 5 to 10 years. And then just finally, as you're weighing different factors, consider other equity benefits of heat pumps, like let's discuss in the last presentation, access to cooling and just more comfortable spaces, and sort of that long-term utility cost flipping that we expect to see. So that's it for me. And Brooks, I think we're holding questions until the end. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, I think, so Meg, there were some good questions for you in the chat there. So if you want to answer any of those by text, feel free to do that. And then, yeah, we can circle back to some of the questions in the discussion portion at the end as well. Great, thanks so much for that, Meg. So next we're going to go to Fidel Maltese to talk about some of the work that the city of Chelsea is doing on energy efficiency outreach there. Fidel, I'm going to read your bio. If you want to bring your slides up while I'm doing that, feel free to start that. So Fidel is the Commissioner of Public Works for the city of Chelsea. He has been with the city of Chelsea since 2017 and oversees all municipal construction as well as all public works related areas for Chelsea. Prior to working for Chelsea, Fidel spent 13 years with Cintas Corporation, 3 of which were spent in China as the regional engineering manager. Fidel holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Lafayette College and is currently pursuing a master's degree in public policy from Tufts University. Fidel is also a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Executive Education. He's originally from Managua, Nicaragua, and Fidel is married to Maria Belén Power and has 2 daughters, Maya, who is 8, and Ana Victoria, who is 4. Fidel, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Brooks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fidel Maltese, and I am the Commissioner of Public Works for the City of Chelsea. I want to tell you today about the city that I call home and where my wife and I are raising our 2 young daughters. There you go. Chelsea is the smallest and second most densely populated city in the Commonwealth. At just 1.8 miles, Chelsea has over 45,000 residents, 73% of which identify as a racial or ethnic minority, the majority of which are Latino, like myself, who immigrated here from Nicaragua. 24% of our residents live below the poverty line. Yet Chelsea plays a critical role for the region. Chelsea stores a significant amount of the jet fuel for Logan Airport, a large portion of the region's home heating fuel, and 400,000 tons of road salt, which are used in over 350 communities. All of this industry brings thousands of trucks into our community, and along with it, increased noise pollution, air pollution, and harmful particulate matter. Chelsea has some of the highest rates of strokes, cardiovascular disease, and has one of the highest rates of asthma hospitalization in the state. Chelsea also has one of the highest concentration of impervious areas in the state, with about 75% impervious surface cover. The picture on the left on this slide shows a study conducted in 2013 by the Mystic River Watershed Association. The areas in yellow show impervious surfaces cover in our city. The picture on the right shows that unless we act now with regards to climate change, almost a third of our city will have high flood risk by 2070. I wanted to highlight this background of our city to understand how important it is to pursue programs such as Mass Save in our city. In 2020, the city of Chelsea joined the Municipal Partnership Program from Mass Save to expand member participation in the program. Very early on in the program, we realized that we could not reach our most affected populations using conventional marketing. With the help of our nonprofit partners, we completed tabling, door knocking, and canvassing. We tried to reach residents where they were. The picture on the right shows 2 Spanish-speaking volunteers at a local community event showcasing the different programs from Mass Save and signing people up for audits on the spot. Small businesses in Chelsea were also hesitant to participate in Mass Save. This was because of language barriers and general mistrust due to past experiences with questionable contractors. With the help of City Councilor Judith Garcia, we held several info sessions where small businesses asked questions. We also joined inspectors during the physical audits. This picture shows a business owner in Chelsea, a small business owner, signing up for a 100% subsidized energy upgrades in her restaurant on downtown Broadway. Chelsea has one of the most used bus lines in the MBTA network, the Route 111. To tap into this population, we created several bus shelter ads. As you can see from this picture, the ad is bilingual, has a lot of information, and has ways to immediately access the programs. There is a QR code where residents can pull up more information, and there is a toll-free number where residents can call in to schedule appointments. We also saw a need to uplift local leaders, such as Joan Cromwell, shown on this picture, who is the president of our Chelsea Black community. We needed them to advocate for Mass Save. In this endeavor, we filmed a series of PSAs that I will show at the end of this presentation. Finally, we ran several ad campaigns in our local newspaper, targeting residents. The ads were visually appealing, bilingual, and relevant. This slide shows the results of the programs in the last 2 years. Chelsea participated in the Municipal Partnership Program in 2020 and in the Municipal Partnership Program in 2021. As you can see, in 2020, we significantly increased participation and exceeded most of our goals. In 2021, which is the chart on the left, we were able to hit all of our goals by the end of August. Sorry, share audio.
What are the benefits of the Mass Save program? It saves you money. Getting a no-cost home energy assessment can help you immediately start saving money on your monthly electricity and gas bills by reducing your energy use, whether you rent or own.
It makes your home more comfortable. a programmable thermostat can help you take control of your indoor temperature, making your home warmer in the winter during the time of day you most need it, while keeping costs low. Getting your building insulated makes your home warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer.
It makes your home healthier. Insulation, combined with no-cost air sealing, can help keep out pollen and other allergens and reduce noise levels in the building, making your home a healthier place to live. During a no-cost home energy assessment, the Energy Advisor checks on the safety of your heating system, including screening for carbon monoxide, drafts, and spillage, which can make your home safer.
You can take action today. Sign up for a no-cost home energy assessment at chelseamasaves.org or by calling 617-430-6230.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thanks so much, Fidel. I love that video. I love the stories. I have lots of questions for you, but I'll hold them to the discussion at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. So Fidel mentioned that Chelsea had participated in a program run by the administrators of Mass Save, the community partnership program that's now called the Community First Partnership. And so that's a great segue into our last presentation of the morning from Ruth Georges and Amanda Formica with Mass Save, who are going to talk to us a little bit about that Community First Partnership. This is our sort of resource highlight for the morning, and it's a program that we think might be of interest for other communities that are interested in doing outreach, like what Fidel was sort of highlighting there in Chelsea. So Ruth and Amanda, feel free to pull up your slides. I'm gonna read your bios out and then I'll turn it over to you. So Ruth was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and moved to the United States in 1990. She attended the University of South Florida and double majored in interdisciplinary social science with a concentration in Africana studies and psychology, and a second degree in women and gender studies. Ruth also has a graduate certificate in gender leadership and public policy from the Center of Women in Politics and Public Policy at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and is currently completing a master's in public administration at Suffolk University. Ruth previously served as a neighborhood and ethnic liaison to Mayor Walsh and as manager of engagement and outreach for the Department of Youth Engagement and Employment for the city of Boston. Currently, she is the supervisor of equity, strategic partnerships, and workforce development for Eversource Energy, and in her role, she utilizes procedural, distributional, and structural equity to expand access to energy efficiency programs and the workforce. And Amanda Formica works for the Massachusetts Customer Energy Management Team at National Grid, where she focuses on residential energy efficiency program strategy related to income eligible customers, new construction, workforce development, partnerships with municipalities and community organizations, and issues of equity. Her background is in stakeholder engagement, strategy, community development, and climate, energy, and transportation policy. She holds a master's in international business from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, a bachelor's degree from the George Washington University, and is a proud AmeriCorps and Fulbright Mexico alumna. So Amanda and Ruth, do you want me to pull up your slides or do you want to show them yourselves?
Yeah, that would be great if you're able to.
Okay,
Thanks, Brooke.
yeah, happy to. Actually, let me just make sure I had them on the right screen here. Alrighty. Okay, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Amanda and myself this morning. We serve as program administrators with the Mass Save program, and the Mass Save Community First Partnership program is one of the programs that Amanda and I are leads on. Amanda, I don't know if you want to briefly introduce yourself. Well, I'm Ruth Georges. I forgot to mention that.
Amanda Formica. I work at National Grid on our residential energy efficiency strategy team for Massachusetts.
All right. And as we mentioned together, our collective utility companies, we are Mass Save. And as one, we form Mass Save, and our common goal is to help residents and businesses across Massachusetts to save money on energy efficiency. Our state leads as a model of what it means to successfully administer energy efficiency programs. And we together, we work to make good happen for Massachusetts as utility companies. Our energy efficiency programs that are sponsored are the energy efficiency program that when you hear sometimes the word sponsor, it's associated with Mass Save. We try to make sure that our programs are consistent across all PAs. We include online energy assessments. People can do statewide hotlines to connect to our programs. In the next 3-year plan, we want to make sure that customers have a personalized experience, a real place-based approach, meaning some people might want an online assessment, then go directly to weatherization. So rather, no matter what areas of their home they're looking to increase energy efficiency, we're really trying our best to meet our customers where they are. Our energy efficient programs are funded by a small charge on customers' bills, as well as by regional greenhouse gas initiative funds. Since customers already pay into these funds, we want to be able to make sure that they can access them in a way that works for them. Next slide. So one of the reasons we like to use this image to kind of explain energy efficiency is that it is not something that's just residential, it's not just commercial, it's in all buildings. And energy efficiency means using less energy to perform the same task and eliminating energy waste. So decarbonizing and reducing residential and commercial energy use, reducing energy and cost and the cost burden is really important to our program on reducing that cost on our customers. No matter if someone is a renter or a homeowner, they financially feel the impact of not having an energy efficient home. And that's no good for our program, that's no good for our planet. So a part of what our program wants to do is, this program specifically too, is to demystify energy efficiency in all communities. Understanding the type of energy improvements that can increase energy efficiency in a residential and commercial building is important to decarbonizing. And so a part of that is really educating customers, residents around the value of the Mass Save programs. And that is a part of getting towns, communities, community-based organizations, state agencies really involved in clean energy and energy efficiency, and really thinking through the different components of a home and how you can make more of these spaces in your home more energy efficient. Next slide. The Mass Save Community First Partnership Program has recently been redesigned to provide even more enhancements, more of a place-based approach, more of a space where we can hear from community-based organizations and from municipalities and towns on the best ways to reach their residents and to engage them in energy efficiency. So the program is designed to leverage local knowledge and trusted relationships and experience from all of these many stakeholders. And the goal overall is to increase awareness and measurable participation in the program. Program administrators are really thinking through critically, how can we be more flexible, place-based, and provide opportunities to be collaborative over the next 3 years to create a clearer channel of communication between participating municipalities and community-based organizations to our programs, build local knowledge and capacity around what energy efficiency programs are, adapt at local levels to reach more people with energy efficiency savings, help municipalities towards their energy efficient energy reduction climate and resiliency goals. We see ourselves as a major stakeholder in being able to reach to do that locally. And we really want to play as an active partner in that role. We also want to provide an avenue for nonprofits and municipalities to connect with our work together, to connect our work to the work that they're doing, to see the connection in our work in public health, and how it overall supports the development of communities and reducing their the cost on the grid and just decarbonizing their communities. Next slide. So our program is specifically around the Community First Partnership program. It really focuses on increasing participation in our programs and around increasing energy savings. The redesign of this program really has honed down on increasing participation with renters, moderate income residents, non-English speaking residents, and small businesses. That is the core components of this program. And the role of the Community First Partnership is to provide community partners with teams and teams with materials and information, so to arm them with materials to be successful in this program, to help them reach more individuals and residents in their community, and to really capitalize on existing relationships and programs and organizations that are already in the community, and to provide incentives that will support their ability to increase participation in the program. And then in turn, it reduces the cost of our customers on the cost of utilities. And in turn, it helps and encourages more residents and small businesses to participate in the program. There are three programs that customers in the target group can be part of. That's our residential, which includes extra incentives for 60 to 80% median income residents, income eligible, which is anyone under the 60% of the median income, and our incentives are and all incentives are 100%. And small businesses, which also include nonprofits, house of worships, and micro businesses, can participate in these incentives. We want to, of course, partner, just looking at the model of the program, we're partnering with our local stakeholders, targeting to reach these particular subset of customers. We want to include stronger connections locally. We want to support a community-led outreach, and we want to establish a two-way communication with program sponsors. This next application, we are looking to accept 20 teams, and by teams, we mean either 20 community-based organizations or 20 municipalities, or joint collaborations that create teams across the state. We are also targeting environmental justice communities. And so by doing that, our goal is to really work with these cities and towns that feel the most of the cost of the energy burden and have the lowest participation rates in our program. As program sponsors, we look to scale our success by being inclusive and really moving our customers that are part of our program from being hard to reach to mostly engaged. And so we're hoping as a part of the goal of this program that our outreach will not only reach more customers, but it'll raise awareness around the value of this program and its overall connection to the state's goals around decarbonization. Amanda?
Yeah, next slide. So I should mention that the eligibility of this program, so it's for municipalities, community-based organizations, or teams of both, or teams of multiple municipalities that are, they must have environmental justice communities designated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that you're focused on doing your outreach in. It doesn't need to be exclusively in EJ communities, but it needs to have an emphasis. Your outreach needs to have an emphasis on those communities. Because these are the priority groups that we're really focused on, increasing participation in the energy efficiency programs, like Ruth mentioned, and they're all on the screen. Because we know that particularly in EJ communities, there are large concentrations of folks who fall into multiple of these categories. And that's really the goal, is to increase participation and remove barriers to participating for folks who are renting, who are English isolated, low and moderate income, and for small businesses. You know your community best. So through this partnership, you can try out methods to reach people that work best for where you live. And you may want to focus your efforts on a couple of these demographics more than others, depending on the needs of the communities that you're going to be working in. That's totally great and encouraged. I'll mention here too that the energy efficiency offerings that the teams are going to be promoting most through this partnership are weatherization, which includes insulation and air sealing, heating, cooling, and ventilation systems, or HVAC, and our small business turnkey program. There's definitely something for everyone when it comes to energy efficiency, and there are a number of other programs that we offer, but these are some of the high impact changes that are really accessible to most customers and provide a big difference on people's energy bills for their home or workplace comfort. And I know I've seen some of the comments in the chat. Communities can definitely focus on electrification in your marketing and outreach. Certainly that's one of our big focuses as energy efficiency program administrators over the next few years. We do have enhanced incentives for particularly for low and moderate income customers for heating systems. That includes switching from oil and propane to heat pumps. So we do want to support people, as well as 100% no cost for weatherization for rental units and low and moderate income customers. And there's always more, but I'll highlight that. Next slide. Oh, can you go back one slide, actually? Thank you. The program structure, really our partner teams are at the center of this. We want this to be, as Ruth said, a collaborative, place-based, and really flexible partnership that works best for you and is designed around what is going to work best in your community as far as outreach and encouraging participation, while offering a plenty of support from program administrators, program sponsors, as well as a vendor that will be hiring to help implement this and help make sure that it's successful and support you community partner teams, as well as us with coordination. So it'll be up to each team. You as a community partner team in your application, you'll identify what your annual goals are and how you want to spend your budget. Teams can apply for up to $60,000 a year. You don't have to apply for the same amount of money in each year. You can start off with smaller goals and smaller budget and build up over the following 2 years, because this is a 3-year partnership that we're looking for. I think I saw Martha in the chat calling out the energy advocate role. We encourage at least 5 to 10 hours a week. I know you're going to hear from Mass CEC more next week about the Empower program. You can absolutely build into your budget more than 10 hours a week for the energy advocate. You can combine it with other funds like from Empower to make it an even bigger position. And the energy advocate is really modeled off of the public health advocate role that we've learned a lot from. So for the public health folks out there, it's a similar type of role. Could be a retired person, could be a student, could be an existing staff person in the community, kind of however you want to build it. And there'll be also support to do community-based social marketing and multilingual media and marketing development. And we'll be here as program administrators to help guide the teams needed with setting your annual goals. We'll be providing training and supervision of the energy advocates, and we'll be supporting with training on community-based social marketing, data, technical assistance, and everything about the energy efficiency programs. Next slide. So in addition to the 12 communities that have worked with us across 2020 and 2021, there have been 12 communities that have worked with us a lot across the last couple of years, and the teams have held nearly 400 outreach events to date just in 2021 and reached over 65,000 customers across the communities in 2021, which is combined over the last couple of years, over 130,000 people have been reached. And all 9 of our teams this year are on track to meet their goals for 2021. I know you heard from Chelsea, from Fidel and Chelsea, and they are just, they're totally rocking it and reaching all their goals, which is really exciting to see. And that takes me to the next slide, which is that we have profiles of several of the communities that have been working with us last 2 years. In addition to Fidel, you'll also see Joe Cosgrove from Methuen. And we also have another profile from City of Lawrence. And so in addition to the testimonials, you'll find application materials and more details, as well as a recording of a longer version of a webinar to find more information. Next slide. So that takes me to applications are due November 12th. We did have some informational webinars recently, but we are going to be posting a recording of that sometime in the next couple of days. And then the orientation is in early January. You will, if you apply, you will hear back within just a couple of weeks about whether your community team was selected. And we will put our email addresses in the chat. We highly encourage folks to apply. We do have a priority list of communities that will receive priority, although any team, again, that is proposing to work in EJ communities is definitely eligible to apply. So we're really excited to work with all of you and hope to hear from you.
Great. Thanks so much, Amanda and Ruth. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen there and open it up. So seen a lot of really good discussion in the chat, some themes kind of emerging there. But with that, I'll call on Meg and Fidel, if you're still with us, to rejoin us for the discussion. So there were a bunch of questions in the chat. Some of them have been answered already. Some of them have not. But I guess I'll just start with sort of a general question for all of you, for anybody who wants to answer, which is, you know, what is your advice to anyone from a community that's tuning in today about how to connect the dots between health, housing, and energy, and what should they be thinking about if they're excited about what you were talking about today and want to get going with something in their community?
Can I start?
Yeah, go for it, Ruth.
All right, I would say one, see them as one and the same. That, you know, where a house is within your community and it's in with the energy that fuels it is equally as important as the physical structure itself. And getting residents to really understand the connection between those two things requires multiple stakeholders collectively coming together, because often energy, especially for energy efficiency, is something more that you feel. It's not necessarily something that you see until your bill comes and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you just, you know, you kind of just say, well, that's just the cost of, you know, what it is. It's just my heating system. And as somebody who formerly rented up until recently, that's so not true. It's very much not true. I lived in an apartment where the home was not properly insulated. Neither were my floorboards, my windows, like the house itself. And because of that, especially during COVID, I can speak to those customers who are renting in that space. I was paying a ridiculous amount for electricity and energy and electricity and gas. And a part of that had to do with the fact that the home was not properly weatherized and the heating system was completely out of date. So I think it's important to bring more renters to the front fold to speak to this. It's important to have more landlords and in these spaces to educate them around the value and the impact of this on the renter. That you know, if you can't reduce their cost of their rent because you've got other responsibilities that you need to take care of in regards to the home, you can at least work to reduce the cost of their energy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So I wanted to. I think that is a really important component of something that I do think that more stakeholders can support us in kind of speaking to.
Yeah, that's great, Ruth. I'm glad you mentioned that sort of the big picture of housing cost and cost of living. That's something that Jeanette mentioned in her presentation as well, and the sort of 30% benchmark. And when thinking about the costs of living that we can reduce, that we know how to reduce. We have resources available to reduce people's energy cost burden. And so I think we should really see these programs as an opportunity to to make people's lives better and to shore up people's budgets by reducing that energy cost, which is something that we can control. Other thoughts about where communities can start and or what they should be tackling?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I mean, I think for us the partnership program and the community first program, which we are definitely going to apply, it just raised this issue right to the forefront of our staff and me in particular, and it gave us a skin in the game, if you will, right? So we signed an MOU with Eversource and National Grid. We made some commitments, right, of staff time, of things that we had to achieve. So it definitely created a little push, for Chelsea, for me, for our staff to get involved. And I will say that the first few months were really hard, right? I mean, because it was trying to figure out, what to do, how we are going to reach these really hard to reach populations. But then once we got started, it got easier, and it snowballed, and we definitely got a lot of momentum. One example is in July, we had not reached any small businesses this year. We held a few info sessions, and one owner came that had a Latino owner who owned 3 restaurants on Broadway, right? And he signed up 3 in a row, and he told his neighbors to do the same. So I think once you get out there, once you get started, the word spreads, and it definitely makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of word of mouth can be some of the best kind of marketing, but I think it can be, what you were speaking to, Fidel, is sort of the challenge of getting people on board early in the process and making the case to them, and then if they're happy with the work that they have done, then they can be some of the best marketers out there. And Fidel, I want to ask you specifically too. You talked a lot about how you were really thoughtful about the ways that you did outreach, and you had this, the signs up by the heavily trafficked bus stop, and you did the PSAs with visible like pillars of the community, leaders in your community. So I think that's a great approach for people to take. And I wonder what your sort of thought process was in picking the right ways to reach your community, because I could see somebody in Framingham or Lynn, sort of thinking like, oh, like what are the analogs or the similar ways that we might want to reach out to our community that would resonate with folks at our scale.
Absolutely. I mean, Chelsea is it's highly renter, right? I mean, and the majority of our residents speak more than one language or only speak Spanish. So we knew that it couldn't be a mailer, in English that was advertising, the program. We knew that we had to go out there, and I guess we have the benefit of other programs that we've held, right? So it's the previous knowledge of our community. So we knew that people were not going to go out of their way and do an online assessment, for example. So what we did is we went to their doors and we did it with them, right? I mean, and we scheduled an appointment on the spot. We also knew that that anyone who came to engage with our residents had to speak Spanish. I mean, that's an entry to the game here in Chelsea. So I think we knew initially what our target communities were, and that made it easier for us to make a strategy of how to reach those communities.
That's great. Yeah. So I think, yeah, identifying who your your audience is, and then figuring out what the strategies are that will resonate most with those folks. I think that's a great approach. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Meg.
Throw in one thing for other communities contemplating this. I mean, I'll echo what Fidel and Ruth and Amanda have said, that I think this kind of community-based, peer-to-peer marketing or knowledge sharing, if you want to call it that, is really effective at reaching people, and mostly like, what does work in your community. The other thing I want to add is just like, don't be afraid to try things too. We've seen, I think Martha Grover's on the line, and she ran a campaign with us, and they had a really great response from a letter from the mayor, or was it a newsletter? Something from the mayor really like got a lot of people to act. So we found the campaigns that try a bunch of different stuff and then see what is resonating. Like, I think trust your intuition, but don't be afraid to try things and see what works.
Yeah, that's great. That sort of iterative process, particularly if you're just starting out on the outreach work, can be really helpful. So we talked a little bit last week. I want to ask this question again, maybe specific to energy efficiency this time around. But last week we had a discussion about structural changes that we might need to make to make it easier for communities to connect the dots between health, housing, and energy, and just to make some of the work happen at a faster pace. So what structural changes do you think we need to make housing and energy healthy and affordable for everyone?
If I can jump in here, the first one that comes to mind, it's been in the chat here, is around renters and landlords. For those who are new to energy efficiency, we talk about the split incentive, whereby a landlord has to approve upgrades to their home, but they are not typically the one paying the electricity and gas bills. Any of us who've been renters many of us who've been renters have experienced this in the past, where you have really high bills and you don't have any control you have little control over that. So any kind of opportunities for municipalities to enact kind of local level rules to keep track of where all of their rental properties are, or put certain requirements in place for upgrades to happen, is something that would benefit people. We also see municipalities where if a house, if there are back taxes or water bills owed on it, we are not able to go in, the contractor is not able to pull permits to do weatherization or other work, which disproportionately affects people who have low income. And so if we were able to get some kind of a permission to continue to pull those permits and do the work, even though there's some small amount of back taxes owed, that's another structural barrier that we run into. Those are a couple that I would call out.
If I can also add, there was a question in here around, like, I think it speaks to what you just mentioned, Amanda, around zoning. I do think that it's really important that municipalities, localities really think about a place-based approach for their town, because every town and city is different, and how it engages with its renters and its landlords. And to Amanda's point, a part of the inspection process of being able to do that, and really setting up ordinances and working with state legislators to think of how to encourage landlords to better engage in this program, but to see the value of having a more energy efficient home goes a long way. I mean, within Mass Save, structurally, we've redesigned this program to provide so many more resources to community-based organizations and towns so that they can be successful. But to Amanda's point, when our contractors are going into these spaces and they still can't get in, and when you have Fidel working really closely with residents and business owners to not only sign them up, but to get contractors to their door, and then they still can't get in because of these other challenges around zoning, around zoning, it does pose as a systemic barrier to this process. And so I do think if towns can really think through, creating opportunities that better position renters to be successful and engaged in this program, it would be to the benefit of all ratepayers.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ruth and Amanda. And I also just want to ask, we had a couple questions for the audience, and maybe I can ask those while we kind of wrap up here. First question is, what barriers are low and moderate income folks in your community facing when it comes to housing, health, and energy? So if you have thoughts on that, please drop them in the chat. And then Amanda and Ruth suggested a couple of questions that I think are interesting too. Are there other best practices that you've found? I know, thanks Martha, you've been dropping knowledge on us through the chat. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. But others of you who have been trying to engage your local community, how have you been doing that around energy efficiency, and what have you found works really well for you? And then to that structural question that we just asked, the Mass Save program has a 100% incentive for renters, but we know that there are more barriers than just the upfront cost. So are there other kind of policies and levers that you think your communities can use to remove barriers like the sort of split incentive that we talked about, or other things that are standing in the way of energy efficiency happening? So throwing 3 questions at you, drop your thoughts to any and all of those in the chat. Yeah, with that, I think I'll just share my screen again here, give a quick preview of next week. And Amanda, Ruth, Fidel, Meg, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom with us this morning. Really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being here. So for next week, we have, just quickly before I make that highlight, want to share, so a couple years ago, MAPC produced a white paper about clean heating and cooling solutions for Massachusetts municipalities. And so if you're interested in diving in more in depth to heat pumps and other clean heating and cooling technologies, after what you heard from Meg this morning, would encourage you to check that out on our website. The link is there, mapc.org/resource-library/clean-heating and cooling. So heating and cooling. I'll try to drop the link in the chat there. And then for next week, our third and final session for now, our topic is solar resources for low and moderate income residents. So we're going to talk about solar access programs, also some work to look at people's utility bills, their supply contracts if they're on those, and ways to further reduce energy burdens for folks. So please tune in next week. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Thanks again to our great presenters, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.